Compton Heights, one of the best neighborhoods in St. Louis. But how did it start? What's the history? What's the architecture behind that? That's what we're going into today on this video. Hi, I'm Ben, your St. Louis real estate ninja. I help people go for their real estate dreams with cash flowing St. Louis rentals. If you have any need for any help with St. Louis real estate, that's what I'm here for. Feel free to email me, text me, or call me, and I'd love to talk to you about your goals. Other than that, let's get to it. Today we have with us Nathan Jackson of St. Louis History and Architecture. So I've been driving through Compton Heights for a long time, and they have the water tower, the park, these big McMansions, and one of my favorite streets is Longfellow, Hawthorne. So I always wanted to know about the history and why is it so unique. So we got Nathan here. Compton Heights, can you tell me about the early history of Compton Heights?
So before Compton Heights, the subdivision was actually laid out. This area was kind of a rural country getaway for a lot of the wealthy residents of St. Louis. So the city limits actually expanded out to Grand Boulevard in 1855. And right around that time, you had a couple of people who had mansions built out there, one of which was James Buchanan Eads, who would later go on to build the Eads Bridge.
Compton Heights is very known for the water tower and the reservoir. Can you tell me what is the story behind the Compton Heights water tower?
So the Compton Heights water tower is actually a standpipe water tower. It's the third and final standpipe water tower that was constructed in St. Louis. And originally, before that water tower actually was built, they had a reservoir built about 30 years earlier, around the 1860s. And the reservoir actually holds the water. The water tower is actually a monitor for the water pressure, and there was a pipe inside that where when the water pressure would get high, it would rise in the tower, and that would let them know what the water pressure was so the pipes around the city wouldn't burst based on the way that the plumbing was in the city at that time.
And I've been going by the water tower for many years. I've walked the park. I like walking around the water features. What is the Naked Truth statue? What's the story behind that?
So the statue is meant to commemorate the German language newspapers in St. Louis, and this was done in 1914. The statue was basically paid for by Adolphus Busch, and it honors the editors of the different German language newspapers. And it's called the Naked Truth because it's a nude statue, and it's supposed to represent the just bare bones truth that was told in these papers. And a lot of times during the Civil War years, they were able to talk about abolition and things like that, even in a very pro-slavery state, because they spoke in German and the pro-slavery people couldn't understand them.
Okay, so it's pretty small. You can walk around it. You have the tower, and then you go up the hill and you can walk around up by the reservoir, and then there's houses behind it. There's a playground behind there. So it's kind of a cool urban historical park.
So the water tower itself was built in 1898, and it was designed by architect Harvey Ellis in the Romanesque style.
Okay, so we are here at Compton Heights. Where are we at, Nathan?
This is the Magic Chef Mansion.
Magic Chef Mansion. I've heard of that. They give tours here, right?
Yes, they do. About once a month, roughly, give or take, they open up the house, the owners, to let people inside.
So this is a single family residence? It looks so huge and grand. It looks like a mansion castle. Can you tell me about like the period or how it came to be designed?
Yes, so the architect of this house was Ernst C. Janssen, and Ernst C. Janssen was a first-generation American born to German immigrants in Ohio. He went to study architecture in Germany, and then after he came back from studying, he came to St. Louis to start his practice, and he was here for about 20 years, and then in 1907, he designed the Magic Chef Mansion for Charles Stockstrom.
Did he own a business, the Magic Chef Company?
Yes, so Charles Stockstrom was president of the Quick Meal Stove Company, and their most popular stove was the Magic Chef, and eventually they changed their name to Magic Chef Stove Company. And so that's the fortunes that built this house.
Oh, what's really interesting is they also have a separate house in the back. It's really big as well. Can you tell me about that?
That's a carriage house. So basically, before they had garages, they had carriage houses, and also a lot of times servants would like live in the carriage house. So,
okay, with the horses?
Horses, depending, would probably be at a livery stable elsewhere, but like they would keep their carriage there, and they would have servants living upstairs.
Gotcha, awesome, awesome.
So this particular house was designed to look a lot like German castles from the Baroque period, and so you have a lot of those influences in the architecture from like the 15th and 16th, 17th century, where they basically had like a revival of that style with some of the German architects here in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And so those are the influences that went into this particular house. So the Stockstrom family actually owned it all the way up to 1989, and they were very elderly, and so the current owner bought the mansion in 1989 for $400,000 and did all kinds of renovation work to bring it up to the standard of living and got it really, really excellently restored inside. And you can go inside and see it, as I said, and there's crazy stuff in there, like a bowling alley in the basement. And all kinds of stuff.
No way.
Yeah.
So they had bowling all the way back then, or do you think that's new?
They had bowling all the way back then. It's like an old-fashioned bowling. Like,
that's crazy. I can't wait to see that.
Yes.
Okay, no, that's some good history on that one. Let's go to the next one.
Okay.
We're at another house. This one is beautiful here, a lot of details. Can you tell me about it?
Yes. So this particular house was built in 1884 for William Hammerstein, who was a banker, and he was involved in the politics of the 19th ward. He was an alderman with the city. So
why did they do the detail around those windows there?
Detail is largely a decorative element, and the entire front of the home is made out of stone, so that white, that's the stone, and they would carve the little details into the stone. And really, that was actually just a decorative element to kind of show wealth, because it cost a lot more to put stone on the front of your home.
It looks really nice, yeah. And another thing that I noticed is that roof. There's the top of the roof, and it goes down to another gutter section. That's really unique.
Yes, so that top floor roof, that's called a mansard roof. It's part of the French Second Empire style, and the Second Empire gets its name from Napoleon III's Second Empire, which is kind of when and where the style originated, was in France, and it became popular in the United States after the end of the Civil War. And this particular example is a little bit later example from 1884.
Why was everything so rectangular back then?
So these homes are very tall, long, and narrow. Part of that has to do with the lots. Part of it also has to do with they used to tax you based on your street frontage of your house. And also it has to do with the airflow within the house, because you want to have long, narrow hallways to allow the air to flow through, especially before air conditioning.
Awesome. Awesome. Good stuff there. Let's get to the next one. Okay, now tell me about this house.
So we're just a couple of doors down on Compton Avenue here, and this particular house was designed by famous architect Jerome Blvd. He was actually a nationally prominent architect during the late 19th century, and some of his biggest designs in St. Louis were the Music and Exposition Hall downtown and the St. Louis Natatorium. And the reason I mention the Natatorium specifically is because a lot of features from the Natatorium went into this particular house's architecture. Like, if you notice on the lower level down there, that big front window has 5 limestone keystones over the top of the window. And he did that as well on his St. Louis Natatorium. This building was built in 1883, and it was built at a cost of roughly $6,000 to $7,000, depending on the source you use. And the building was built with a combination of that Second Empire style as well as the East Lake style, which kind of came from Victorian England.
at this next house here, and I know there's some history here with Anheuser-Busch. Can you talk about this property?
So this house was built in 1891 for Louisa Anheuser. And Louisa Anheuser was the widow of Eberhard Anheuser, who was one of the founders of Anheuser-Busch. Originally, Anheuser-Busch was actually called Eberhard Anheuser and Company. And so Adolphus Busch actually came on after he fought for the Union during the Civil War, and he married Eberhard and Louisa's daughter Lily. And after Eberhard died, then Louisa moved into this mansion here on Russell Boulevard. So the house was actually designed by Theodore Link, and Theodore Link designed this particular house at the same time he was designing Union Station downtown.
So they're building Union Station and this house at the same time?
Yes, different architectural influences, but they were being built at the same time. This house has that Dutch step that's up top there for one of its roof gables. And you also have a lot of different features like the terracotta brickwork around the window below.
That's cool.
You have Roman arches over the first floor windows. And you also have that big bay window that hangs out over the second floor there. And that's called an Oriel window as it juts out from the main structure.
Was this carport always here, or was that?
Yes, it's been modified most likely at some point, but originally they would have had a little port like that, and that's called the porte cochere, and that's where the carriages would have pulled through and let people out to go inside through a side door.
So now we are on Longfellow. Longfellow is one of my favorite streets in the city. It feels really exclusive and private, and a lot of huge properties here. Nathan, tell me about this one.
This one here was built in 1908 for Leo Hadley in the Tudor Revival style. Leo Hadley was the head of the Hadley Dean Glass Company, and if you look really closely at some of the details in the windows, you can see the stained glass that was made by the company that they incorporated into his home. And this home is a really great example of that Tudor Revival style. You have that kind of like dark and white contrast with the wood, the really steep gables. And then one really cool feature about this particular home is you see an H and a D in the family crest up there for Hadley Dean. And
oh yeah, that's so cool with the family crest and the shield. It looks like it was an official manor or something back then.
Yes, very much so. And the style really has a lot of English influence from like the English Tudor Gothic kind of period, and that revival period was during the early 1900s, like when this house was built in 1908.
Thank you so much, Nathan, for all that you've helped us learn today about Compton Heights. How can people get a hold of you more if they needed to?
So the best place to find me is on Facebook through my Facebook page, St. Louis History and Architecture. I give walking tours and I write articles on different histories of 19th and early 20th century buildings. And I also have an Instagram and a YouTube channel as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nathan. Once again, if you need help with St. Louis real estate, that's what I'm here for. Feel free to email, text, or call me, and we can talk about your St. Louis goals. But other than that, we'll see you on the next one.